Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everybody. How are we all doing today? Sean, Millennial Outsider here, and we've got another video. This one's going to be rather lengthy because the fact that this exchange is about 10 minutes long, and I wanted to take a look at it. I've actually already watched it, but it's Ted Cruz basically destroying Mayorkas about the border. Now, Ted Cruz likes to talk. We all know that. And sometimes he can drone on and on. But at some points, and you'll see here in a moment, he gets pretty to the point. And Mayorkas doesn't answer a single question. He tries to give the political answer, and Ted Cruz doesn't even allow that. So we're going to take a look at it right now. And let's go ahead and see what Mr. Ted Cruz and Mayorkas have to say to each other.
Good morning, Secretary Mayorkas.
Good morning.
Is there a crisis at our southern border?
Yes.
Senator, there is a very significant...
That's a yes or no
There's
question.
a very significant...
Is there a crisis?
Yes.
Senator, there's a very significant challenge.
I think your microphone is not on.
There is a very significant challenge.
Is my microphone on?
Yes
Okay,
or
good.
no, is there a crisis?
I believe I've addressed that question.
So you're refusing to answer?
No, you haven't.
Senator, there is a very significant challenge, and
Will you answer if there's a crisis?
Therefore, we are dedicating the resources...
Okay, so you're refusing to answer. Well, Secretary Mayorkas, I'll tell you someone who is willing to answer, which is your and President Biden's chief of the Border Patrol, in a sworn deposition in July of 2022, when asked, would you agree, Chief Ortiz, that the southern border is currently in crisis? Answer, yes. Notice none of those wiggle words, none of that equivocation. One word, one syllable, yes. Are you willing to speak with the same clarity as Chief Ortiz? Is there a crisis at our southern border, yes or no?
Senator, I'm very proud to work alongside...
So you refuse to answer. Let me ask you the next question. Has the crisis at our southern border made Americans less safe, yes or no?
Senator,
Yes.
we are dedicated to the safety.
Has the crisis made Americans less safe? I don't want a discourse. It's a yes or no question.
Senator, we have a challenge of...
You refuse to answer the question.
Not...
Mr. Secretary, let me show you how someone doing his job answers a question in a straightforward manner. Chief Ortiz, is the crisis that is currently ongoing at the southern border making the border less safe for Americans and aliens alike? Answer, yes. One word, one syllable, 3 letters. That's how someone answers a question and does their job. You're being a politician misleading the American people. Let me give you a chance again. Will you show the same integrity Chief Ortiz shows? Is the crisis at the southern border making Americans less safe? Yes or no?
Senator, we have 260,000...
You refuse to answer the question. Let's move on.
And security of the...
There is no addressing the questions at all. These are thought out answers beforehand, basically made to extend the length of time that he has to answer so that the senator from Texas is not able to answer all of his questions. Now, obviously, Ted Cruz knows this. He's not going to waste any time with a political answer. He's looking for yes or no questions, basically to show that they don't have an answer. They are unwilling to accept any responsibility for the crisis that is at the border. I mean, we all know that the border is not what it used to be. The border has never been perfect. We've tried to make it more secure, but in the last 2 years, it has not gotten secure. It's gotten worse, way worse, and he's going to address that here very shortly.
Next question, Mr. Mayorkas. Has the crisis made aliens less safe? Yes or no?
Senator, we are seeking...
So you won't answer that question either. It's a yes or no. Has it made aliens less safe?
Senator, smugglers are exploiting...
Has the crisis made aliens, yes, less safe? Are you willing to answer it?
Senator, the smuggling organizations...
Okay, you're filibustering again. Let me ask you this question. How many migrants have died under President Biden?
Senator, you're...
See, Ted Cruz, he's not just making this about the American public. He's also making it about the people that are trying to come across the border. Now, no one's sitting here denying that most people coming across this border are coming here to have a better life and provide more for their family. And they're getting taken advantage of by these cartels. They're paying tens of thousands of dollars to get across. I mean, the human smuggling into America on the southern border is a $1 billion industry for the cartels down south.
Your phrasing of the question is actually quite misleading.
How many migrants died in 2022?
At our approaching our southern border?
Yes.
What approaching what? Are we talking about the northern border?
Precisely why we are seeking to exclude
So you're,
the smuggling
do you know the answer? Do you
organization.
know how many died?
I do not.
You do not. Of course you don't. I know how many died. 853.
That is
853. And by the way, here are the numbers that have died every year. You go back to 1998, you see it's consistently between 300 and 400, 300, 400, 300, 400. Suddenly, 2021, what happens? You get in office, and that red line are dead bodies. I've been on the Rio Grande, and
That's rather amazing, this statistic right here. And obviously, you know, you're crossing a river, there's going to be some deaths, but how it skyrocketed that much, if you look at the proportion of people crossing and the proportion of people dying, that means that there's even more and more people coming in. And obviously, these cartels don't care if someone falls behind and drowns. They're just keep on going. You know, and they still get the money whether the person crosses and goes and makes it or doesn't.
and I've seen dead bodies floating there who've drowned because of your refusal to do your job. You don't even know how many have died. What do you say to the Texas farmers and ranchers who find pregnant ladies dead on their property, who find toddlers dead on their property? What do you say to them?
I say that is why precisely we are taking it to the smuggling organization.
But you are not. That is simply not true.
That is simply not true. These smugglers are running rampant with smuggling across people, smuggling across drugs, smuggling across gang members, criminals.
Number two, it is why we are
let me read from the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal 2 weeks ago ran an article entitled, "It's like a graveyard. Record numbers of migrants are dying at the border." The story begins with this chilling line, quote, Eagle Pass, Texas. Local officials keep a refrigerated truck to hold the bodies of migrants who drown in the currents of the Rio Grande while trying to cross the border into the U.S. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that this article be entered into the record. Let me ask you a different question. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under the Biden administration?
Senator, this is precisely why we instituted.
I don't want a lecture. It's a question. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under your administration?
Senator, this is exactly why on January 5th, we announced
again,
the parole
do you know
program.
how many? Do you know how many children have been sexually assaulted?
This is why we.
Okay, you're going to refuse to answer that question as well. Let's move on. It's obvious you've been instructed to stonewall, so I'm not going to let you. You don't get to stonewall and filibuster. Now, one of my Democratic colleagues before said the Democrat talking point, quote.
He didn't even try and address that. He was talking about earlier in the year, in January 5th.
Quote, this problem didn't start under Biden. Look, I get if you're a partisan spinner, you got to figure out something to say about the absolute catastrophe that has played out under the Biden administration. True or false, Secretary Mayorkas, 2020 was the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. Is that true or false?
It is certainly the lowest level of immigration in many, many years. And what was it
Okay, fine.
in 2020? What was it, Senator, in 2020 that impacted the entire world, including the United States?
Okay, so your testimony is the reason we had the lowest rate was COVID. It had nothing to do with building the wall, nothing to...
You know, it doesn't stop because of the pandemic. Cartels aren't going to shut down, go, well, for our safety, we are going to shut down trying to cross the border. And then once we do cross the border, everyone must have social distancing, 6 feet apart, wear a mask, and make sure that they are sanitizing their hands regularly. Cartels aren't going to care about that. Cartels are still going to keep people going in and going in and going in as much as they can. They don't care about the pandemic. That is a complete and total crap answer.
To do with any catch and release, nothing to do with remain in Mexico. With all respect, Mr. Secretary, that answer is laughable. And in fact, if you look at illegal immigration, let's look at CBP encounters. You can see 500,000, 500,000, it drops to the lowest level, and boom, what happens? You show up. And that red line is you. That red line is Joe Biden. And you're claiming nothing happened. Oh, gosh, this was here before us. No, you made the decision to allow this to happen. Let me ask you, we now have over 5.5 million people who've entered this country illegally under Joe Biden. How many murderers have you released into America?
Senator, I'm not aware of any murderer whom we've.
So you don't know?
Senator, let me say something.
Do you know?
If you take a look at.
No, you don't get to give a speech. Do you know how many murderers you've released?
I'm just trying to answer your question.
How many rapists have you released?
Senator, I'm trying to answer your question.
You can answer, I know or I don't know.
Senator, any individual who poses a public safety threat.
How many child molesters have you released?
And removed into the United States, from the United States.
Oh, so your testimony under oath, subject to perjury, is that you have not released any murderers, rapists, or child molesters among the 5.5 million. Is that your testimony?
Mr. Chairman, may I have the opportunity?
No, you may not. You may answer my question.
You're not.
Is that your?
He goes to the chairman, and the chairman isn't helping him at all. The chairman can't do anything about him. All he's trying to do is ask questions, and this guy is not answering. Mayorkas is just trying to stonewall him, and Ted Cruz is basically just not allowing him to do it. He's trying to get answers, and he's trying to show. I mean, Ted Cruz knows that Mayorkas isn't going to answer these questions honestly or truthfully. He's going to try and dance around. What he's trying to do is he's trying to show that the Biden administration knows that the border is a catastrophe right now. The border is a mess. They are not doing anything about it. And so they want to sidestep and stonewall as much as possible with Ted Cruz and all the other conservative senators on the panel to basically just kind of hide the truth. They don't want to, they're not going to acknowledge anything, and they're just going to try and sit there and hide it.
Testimony, yes or no?
Senator, you're not allowing me to answer your question.
I am allowing you to answer. I'm not allowing you to filibuster.
If you take a look at the pace of immigration in 2018 to 2019.
You're refusing to answer. Let's move on. Let's move on to gotaways. Gotaways are the people that get away that you know about. Now, what happened under your administration? Gotaways consistently down at this low line. Boom, you get in. And they go from below 180,000 to 600,000. Now, I'll tell you this about a gotaway. You don't know among those 600,000 a year, you have no idea how many are murderers, correct?
That is precisely why the
correct?
number of gotaways.
Do you know how many of those are murderers?
That is precisely
So you refuse to answer the question. You know how many are rapists? Do you know how many are rapists? This is a question. You're a lawyer. You know how to answer questions. Of the 600,000, do you know how many of them were rapists?
Senator, this is why
the answer is no. Let me ask you this. Do you know how many of them are terrorists? And I don't want to, Senator, here's my lecture on this. Do you know how many of the 600,000 gotaways were terrorists? Yes or no?
Senator, we are focused on the
You refuse to answer that.
I would hope that we would at least know if we're catching terrorists at the border. Obviously, terrorist organizations would see our border as a weakness right now and try and get people in here that are wanting to do some nefarious things, obviously. So far, we've been able to stop most of the terrorists coming into this country that we know of. But in the end, it only takes one. It only takes one.
As well. What's the result of massive gotaways? Well, one of the results is drug overdoses. And we now have last year over 100,000. So
I'm up here. We live in an area outside of Portland, Oregon, and due to this fentanyl crisis, I mean, it's apparent even just driving down the street. You have cheap dangerous narcotics entering our country and being distributed by the cartels. I mean, the cartels have strongholds in every major metropolitan area, especially in liberal areas, because, well, they're liberal areas. We've defunded the police. A fentanyl pill, I think the street value right now is $5. So $20 can get you 4 hits or four doses, 4 highs, however you do it. And we have seen an incredible increase in drug overdoses in the last 2 years. And this has a direct correlation with our border and what we're allowing to come through.
Overdoses who died, the majority from Chinese fentanyl streaming across the border. Now, you told Senator Cornyn you care, but look what has happened under your policy. When you open up the border to the worst illegal immigration in our nation's history, people die. You claim you care. Mr. Secretary, that is a lie. You know, some months ago, Karine Jean-Pierre stood up at a White House briefing and said, people are not just walking across the border.
Actually, they are. Yeah.
Was she telling the truth?
Senator, you are
Was she telling the
so
truth?
profoundly disrespecting.
Was she telling
my
the truth?
22 years
Okay,
of government service.
you get to answer questions. You don't
Senator,
get to give speeches.
Senator, I served as a federal prosecutor.
All right,
for
you're
12
refusing
years.
to answer. If you look at, she was lying, and she was not lying on her own. She was lying on behalf of the President of the United States. Now, the photograph people.
They've got so many boards and photographs. Oh, wow. Yeah, Ted Cruz, he will get up there, and, man, you give him a platform, he will go and go and go. And a lot of times it can actually get a little obnoxious. I'm not the biggest Ted Cruz fan, but when he is on point and on fire like this, especially, I mean, he's a senator from Texas, so this is direct impact with his constituency. So talking to a bureaucrat from Washington, D.C., who says he's a federal prosecutor who's not doing anything to protect their borders, Ted Cruz, I think, would be a little passionate about it. So,
Walking. She was lying on behalf of the President of the United States. This is a photograph from just one day along the Rio Grande.
Look at all of those
hundreds
people.
of thousands of people walking across the border.
Okay, hundreds of thousands, no, but I mean, just look at that. I mean, they're even lighting the way. There's lights over there showing them where to go. And so what they're processed, they're told to claim asylum, and then they're released into the population. They're not sent back until their case can be reviewed. They're released.
You have allowed this to happen. The photograph that was before. What are these wristbands?
I don't know what they are.
You
Senator.
don't know what they are. Mr. Secretary, you have just testified to the American people you're incompetent at your
right
job.
here.
Because I've been to the southern border, and if you go to the southern border, along the southern border, you see thousands of these wristbands because the illegal immigrants wear them. The drug cartels, every color corresponds to how many thousands of dollars they owe the cartels. You have turned these cartels into multi-billion-dollar criminal organizations, and these are modern-day leg irons because these are children being sold into sex slavery, and you don't even know what they are. That is astonishing.
So to touch on that, some of these children who come across, they don't come across with their parents or anything. They just come across, and then they say they have a sponsor, and the sponsor can be anybody. It doesn't have to be a family member. If they say that their sponsor is so and so. And what we're seeing a lot more of is these sponsors are taking these kids once they get into the United States, and they're selling them into the sex trade. They're putting them on the streets there, and it's just these kids come here trying to get away from poverty and basically the same stuff that they're going to be exposed to here. It's really, really, really frightening and disgusting and sad, and this administration is allowing it to happen.
Mr. Secretary, how many children have been sold into sex slavery under your administration?
Senator,
Here we
are
go.
taking it to the cartels.
How many
and the
children have been
smuggling
sold into sex slavery?
in an
Do you know how many children have been
unprecedented-
sold into sex slavery?
to an unprecedented degree?
Mr. Secretary, I want to say to you right now,
It is
your
precisely-
behavior is disgraceful, and the deaths, the children assaulted, the children raped, they are at your feet. And if you had integrity, you would resign. And I will tell you, the men and women of the Border Patrol, they've never had a political leader undermine them. They despise you, Mr. Secretary, because you're willing to let children be raped to follow political orders. This is a crisis. It's a disgrace. And you won't even admit this human tragedy is a crisis.
Claiming 1 minute chairman time, Mr. Secretary, would you like to respond to any of those questions?
What the senator said was revolting. I'm not going to address it.
So there it is. That is the border crisis in a nutshell. And I mean, you can't put it much plainly than that. What Ted Cruz was sitting there trying to say was very simple and to the point. And these politicians, they won't address it at all. They will stonewall. They will try and throw out facts that are skewed. But in the end, there is a crisis. And it's something that we have not seen ever. I mean, you look at the statistics that Ted Cruz put up there on his flashcard board things, and it's disgraceful that we are allowing the cartels also to take advantage of poor people that just want to come across the border. They don't care if they live or die. They're selling them into sex slavery once they get here. There's it's just a sea of humanity, and we need to find a way to put a stop to it. We need to find a way to get people to get the border secure, and that way the cartels won't be able to take advantage of these people. But it doesn't look like this administration is doing it at all. So anyways, 22 minutes. I'm sorry for the long video, guys. I hope that you were able to make it all the way through. If you were, I'd love to hear your opinions on this and hear your thoughts. Please go ahead, like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Have a